Emily Carter had just become a bride, standing at the center of a perfect wedding celebration in the quiet town of Willow Creek. Only hours earlier, she had been smiling for photographs beside her new husband, Daniel Hayes, surrounded by friends, music, and glowing lights from the lakeside estate. To everyone watching, their future looked bright and full of promise. But before the sun rose the next morning, Emily Carter was found dead inside the locked bridal suite, still wearing her wedding dress and the diamond ring Daniel Hayes had placed on her finger the night before. What investigators discovered in the days that followed would shock even the most experienced detectives, revealing a chilling plan hidden behind romance, betrayal, and a deadly secret no one at that wedding could have imagined. The town of Willow Creek was the kind of quiet place where very little ever changed. Tree-lined streets, small local shops, and peaceful neighborhoods gave the town a calm rhythm that residents had grown used to over the years. Because of that, any major event quickly became the talk of the entire community. When news spread about the upcoming wedding between Emily Carter and Daniel Hayes, excitement moved through the town like a wave. People spoke about the celebration for weeks, and many believed it would be the most beautiful wedding Willow Creek had seen in years. Emily Carter had lived in Willow Creek most of her life. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital and had earned a reputation for being patient, hardworking, and deeply caring toward others. Many families in town remembered the comfort she had provided during difficult moments at the hospital. Her calm personality and warm smile made her one of the most trusted people in the community. When she announced her engagement, many people felt genuinely happy for her. Daniel Hayes had arrived in town 2 years earlier. Unlike Emily, he had grown up in a much larger city. He quickly built a successful career in real estate and became known for his confidence and ambition. Friends described him as charming and determined, someone who always seemed to know exactly what he wanted from life. When he and Emily began dating, the relationship appeared strong and full of promise. Their wedding took place at a large lakeside estate just outside the town. The property was surrounded by tall pine trees and overlooked a quiet stretch of water that reflected the golden colors of the setting sun. Decorations covered the gardens. Long tables were arranged for guests, and soft lights hung between the trees. Everything had been carefully prepared for a night of celebration. As evening arrived, laughter and music filled the air. Guests moved between the garden and the grand hall, enjoying the food, dancing. The peaceful morning at the lakeside estate was suddenly broken by panic when one of the staff members went to check on the bridal suite. The celebration from a night before had ended late, and most of the guests were still asleep in their rooms across the large property. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The hallways were quiet, the decorations from the wedding still glowing softly under the morning light. But when the staff member knocked on the door of the bridal suite, there was no response. After several attempts, the estate manager was called to open the room. What they found inside immediately turned the quiet morning into chaos. Emily Carter was lying on the floor near the balcony doors. Emergency services were called within minutes, but when the paramedics arrived, they quickly realized there was nothing they could do. Emily had already been dead for hours. The shocking news spread quickly through the estate, and guests who had been celebrating only hours earlier now stood in disbelief as police vehicles began arriving. Experienced detectives entered the room expecting to find signs of violence or some kind of clear explanation. Instead, the scene confused them from the moment they stepped inside. The bridal suite looked almost untouched. The bed was neatly arranged, the furniture remained in its place, and nothing appeared broken or disturbed. Emily was still wearing part of her wedding dress, and her jewelry had not been removed. There were no signs of a struggle anywhere in the room. Even stranger was the door. Investigators confirmed that the door had been locked from the inside. The balcony doors were also closed, and the height of the building made it nearly impossible for someone to enter or leave without being noticed. Security cameras in the hallway showed no visitors during the night. To the detectives, the scene created a disturbing question. If no one had entered the room and nothing had been taken, how had the bride died only hours? The investigation quickly moved to the county medical examiner's office, where specialists began the careful process of determining how Emily Carter had died. At first glance, The situation made little sense. Her body showed no clear injuries, and there were no visible marks that suggested violence. In most suspicious deaths, investigators could usually identify at least one physical clue pointing toward the cause. In Emily's case, there seemed to be nothing. The medical examiner conducted a full autopsy, carefully examining every possible detail. Blood samples, tissue samples, and toxicology tests were ordered immediately. Detectives waited anxiously for the results, hoping the laboratory would reveal something that could explain the impossible scene inside the locked bridal suite. Several days later, the results arrived, and they stunned everyone involved in the investigation. Emily Carter had died from exposure to a rare and extremely powerful toxin. The chemical attacked the nervous system, causing rapid failure of vital organs within minutes. What made the discovery even more troubling was how little of the substance was required to become deadly. Even a microscopic amount could be fatal if it entered the body. Investigators expected the toxin to have been swallowed through food or drink. However, the laboratory results showed no evidence that Emily had consumed it. There were also no puncture wounds or marks that would suggest an injection. The toxin had entered her body through her skin. This unusual discovery forced detectives to reconsider everything that had happened during the wedding. Somewhere during the celebration, Emily must have come into contact with an object carrying the poison. It could have been something she touched, wore, or used without realizing the danger. Police began collecting every item that had been near the bride that evening. Her makeup kit, perfume bottles, hair accessories, and jewelry were all carefully sealed. The wedding ring was sent to the forensic laboratory along with the other personal items collected from the bridal suite. At first, investigators believed the tests would simply rule it out like everything else. The ring appeared elegant and perfectly normal, crafted from polished platinum with a clear diamond set carefully in the center. It had been designed to symbolize love and commitment, not danger. But because it had been worn directly against Emily's skin for several hours, detectives decided it deserved closer examination. Forensic technicians placed the ring under powerful microscopes and began studying every detail. The outer surface revealed nothing unusual. The metal was smooth, and the diamond was securely fixed in its setting. However, when the stone was carefully lifted from its mount, investigators noticed something that had not been visible before. A tiny groove had been carved beneath the diamond. Inside that nearly invisible space, laboratory instruments detected traces of the same toxin that had been found in Emily's body. The chemical had been carefully placed inside the groove and sealed beneath the stone. As Emily wore the ring throughout the evening, her body heat slowly warmed the metal, allowing the poison to spread gradually onto her skin. The discovery shocked the entire investigative team. The method was extremely precise and required careful planning. Whoever prepared the ring had known exactly how the toxin worked and how it could enter the body without leaving obvious signs. Detectives quickly turned their attention to the origin of the ring. Records showed that Daniel Hayes had purchased it months earlier from a respected jeweler in a nearby city. When investigators interviewed the jeweler, they learned that the ring had been crafted according to Daniel's design request, but had never been altered after it left the shop. According to the purchase records, the ring had remained in Daniel's possession until the day of the wedding. As detectives continued reviewing the footage and photographs from the wedding day, they focused on the moments just before the ceremony began. The recordings showed the bridal party helping Emily prepare while guests gathered in the garden outside the estate. At first, the scenes looked completely normal, filled with excitement and nervous energy that often comes before a wedding. But investigators began watching the footage more carefully, slowing down certain moments and studying the small details. In one clip, Emily stood near a mirror while her friends adjusted her dress and jewelry. For a brief moment, her childhood friend Laura Bennett reached for the ring and carefully placed it into Emily's hand. The action seemed harmless, the kind of small assistance friends often give during busy wedding preparations. However, that short moment immediately caught the attention of investigators. Laura Bennett had been close to Emily for many years. They had grown up in the same neighborhood and attended the same schools. Many people in Willow Creek believed their friendship was strong and loyal. Laura had been chosen as one of the bridesmaids, and throughout the day, she had stayed close to the bride while helping with final preparations. When detectives began examining Laura's background, they discovered information that quickly raised serious concerns. Only a few months earlier, Laura had worked at a pharmaceutical laboratory in a nearby city. The company specialized in researching rare chemical compounds used for medical treatments. Even more troubling was the fact that Laura had recently been dismissed from that job under suspicious circumstances. According to company reports, a small amount of an experimental toxin had disappeared from the laboratory storage area around the time Laura left her position. The description of the missing substance matched the toxin found in Emily's body. Investigators quietly searched Laura's apartment soon afterward. Inside a locked. As investigators continued studying every detail connected to the wedding, they decided to take a closer look at Daniel Hayes' past. At first, Daniel appeared to be exactly what everyone in Willow Creek believed him to be, a successful businessman who had simply moved to town for new opportunities. His public image was clean, and none of the local residents had ever reported problems involving him. But experienced detectives knew that appearances often hid important secrets. Financial investigators began reviewing Daniel's previous business activities in the city where he had lived before moving to Willow Creek. The deeper they searched, the more troubling information they discovered. Several years earlier, Daniel had been involved in a real estate investment company that collapsed after a series of questionable transactions. Large sums of money had disappeared during that time, and one of Daniel's former business partners had accused him of fraud before suddenly disappearing. The case had never been solved. Although Daniel had never been formally charged with a crime, the investigation into the failed company left many unanswered questions. Records showed that Daniel had quietly left the city not long after the scandal began attracting attention. While detectives continued examining his financial history, another surprising connection appeared. Phone records revealed repeated communication between Daniel Hayes and Laura Bennett months before the wedding was announced. The calls and messages were frequent and continued regularly during the weeks leading up to the ceremony. This discovery raised serious concerns for investigators. As the investigation moved forward, forensic specialists continued studying the wedding ring with even more advanced equipment. The earlier discovery of the hidden groove had already proven that the poison was deliberately placed inside the ring, but detectives wanted to know exactly how it had been prepared. Every tiny mark on the metal could reveal who had handled it and what tools had been used. Under high-resolution imaging, experts noticed extremely small scratches inside the narrow groove beneath the diamond. These marks were not part of the ring's original design. Instead, they looked like the result of laboratory tools used to carefully apply a chemical substance into a confined space. The pattern suggested someone had opened the setting, added the toxin, and then sealed the stone back into place. Chemical analysts then studied the exact formula of the poison. The substance matched the toxin that had gone missing from the pharmaceutical laboratory where Laura Bennett had previously worked. However, the mixture was not identical to the original compound stored at the lab. It had been altered slightly, as though someone had attempted to recreate or modify the formula using written instructions. This discovery became a critical turning point. When investigators searched Daniel Hayes' laptop and digital storage devices, they found several files containing research about chemical toxins. Among those files were downloaded scientific papers describing substances capable of being absorbed through human skin. Some of the documents included notes explaining how heat from a body could slowly release a chemical placed on metal. The information matched the method used in the poisoned ring almost perfectly. Detectives began to piece together what had likely happened. Laura Bennett had access to the rare toxin because of her former job at the laboratory. Daniel Hayes appeared to have studied ways to use such a substance without leaving obvious evidence. Once investigators gathered enough evidence, the final stage of the case began to unfold. Financial records, phone data, forensic analysis, and laboratory findings were carefully organized to reveal the full picture behind Emily Carter's death. What initially appeared to be an impossible mystery inside a locked room slowly transformed into a calculated crime that had been planned long before the wedding day. Detectives discovered that Emily had recently inherited valuable property from her late grandparents. The land, located near a growing development area outside Willow Creek, had quietly increased in value over the past few years. According to legal documents, Emily remained the sole owner of the property. However, after marriage, Daniel Hayes would gain shared financial access to many of her assets. Investigators believed this inheritance had become the central motive behind the plan. Digital evidence showed that Daniel had spent months researching ways to carry out a crime that would leave almost no trace. His files included notes about toxins that could enter the body through skin contact, along with articles describing unusual poisoning cases that had confused investigators in the past. The method hidden inside the wedding ring appeared to be the final version of that research. Laura Bennett's role became clearer as the investigation continued. Records from the pharmaceutical laboratory confirmed that she had access to the rare toxin before leaving her job. The chemical was small enough to conceal and dangerous enough to become deadly with only a tiny amount. Authorities concluded that Daniel had designed the plan while Laura provided the chemical needed to carry it out. The wedding itself had become the perfect opportunity to place the poisoned ring on Emily's hand without raising suspicion. Months after the tragic wedding, both Daniel Hayes and Laura Bennett were arrested. The evidence presented by investigators shocked the entire town.